Hello and welcome back again to Habits and Health Span, an Amway podcast. We're so glad to be on this journey with you. My name is Alyssa. I'm here as always with my fabulous co-host, John. Hello, John.
Hi, Alyssa.
And we also have some exciting guests with us again today. We can't wait to dive into these topics once again.
I'm so excited to dig into another episode.
Yes, me too. How have you been applying the things that we've learned? Because I'm learning a ton.
I'm also learning a ton. You know, we just had our skin health episode, and I really learned the importance of a practice that I had not been applying, lotioning daily. So every morning now, I'm lotioning up the hands, the face, and I don't mean to brag, but I've been told that I am glowing.
Wow!
Now. So
Congratulations.
So wonder of wonders, colored me surprised. This stuff really works.
Okay. All right. Well, as you mentioned, we are going to continue learning about skin health because it's really true that there's always more that you can learn, right? So today we get to take a deeper dive into some of these things. And it makes sense because we learned from that previous episode that your skin is the largest organ.
You're absolutely right. You know, we touched on it a little bit, but the exposome, all those external factors that are impacting our health span and our skin health. And taking us on this deep dive today, we have two incredible guests. First up, calling in from Germany, we have Dr. Jean Krutmann. He's a member of Amway's Scientific Advisory Board. He's also a professor of dermatology and environmental medicine, as well as the director IUF at Leibniz Research Institute for Environmental Medicine. John, welcome.
Thank you, and happy to be here.
And we also have with us Dr. Rong, a principal research scientist at Amway Research and Development. Welcome, Dr. Kong.
Thank you for having me.
John, could you please tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure, my pleasure. Actually, as by my education, I'm a dermatologist, but here in my institute, we do a lot more than just investigating skin. So we also work on lung, we work on brain, we work on gut. Maybe as a rule, we are primarily interested in what we call barrier organs, so the organs that are in between the rest of our body and the environment. And therefore, we need to have different disciplines here to better understand what's going on.
Great. And Dr. Kong, tell us a little bit about your background also.
By training, I got a PhD in biomedical engineering. So I have been with Amway for more than 12 years now. So I'm part of the R&D group in skin science. And our focus is on conducting fundamental skin research using both internal resources and, more importantly, the partnership with external experts like Dr. Krutmann here.
We are excited to dig into it with you. So let's get started. Jean, today we're talking about the exposome, but part of what that impacts is our skin. Can you please share with us maybe at a high level what healthy skin looks like?
Yeah, excellent question. I think it's mainly a negative list if you think about it, because you usually list up all the things that you should not have visible on the skin in order to have the skin being perceived as healthy skin. So no scaling, no redness, no crusts, no blisters, or in other words, no skin disease. But I think more and more we also extend it to signs of aging. So it would also be a skin without wrinkles and a skin which has no irregular hyperpigmentations. So it's more or less a negative definition, because healthy skin we just view as normal.
So actually, Amway also did some research a few years ago. We came up with our own definition. So I think there are three different aspects. So starting from functional, and then the visible, and also the sensory. So Dr. Krutmann already mentioned all the visible signs that relate to the healthy skin or unhealthy skin, but also functionally, the skin serves the main function of the skin is the serve as a barrier to protect your body from outside the assault. So that's for functionally, you have to have a very good barrier function. And also from a sensory standpoint, the healthy skin should be free of things like stinging or irritation or feel like a tightening. We use the word unremarkable. So based on our own definition, those are the three different aspects, echo what Dr. Krutmann said too. Yeah.
I love it. As you're talking, I'm sort of going, checklist, okay. It seems like these things are unavoidable, probably because we don't exist in a vacuum. So, Jean, could you share a little bit about what the exposome is and even how it extends beyond skin health?
Yeah, actually, the definition is very easy. It's the totality of all non-genetic factors we're exposed to from conception to death. That sounds very easy, but when you start thinking about it, it's truly complicated because it's so many factors. And you also always have this time axis in there. And during life, we might have different susceptibilities to these factors. So it's really a very, very complicated business. And this is the reason why usually the exposome is always being used in a more defined way. So let's talk about skin, then we can talk about the skin aging exposome, and then, of course, the number of factors which are really relevant come down to just a better defined number.
That's really helpful, Jean. Thank you. And now that we know what exposome is and we hear, these different categories of skin health, what are the effects of these exposomes on our skin?
One thing is that they are very important for aging. And this is what you also might have heard as the extrinsic part of aging, because it's coming from the outside. And then I think for decades, people have really thought of exposure to sunlight being the most important, if not the only exposomal factor that really drives skin aging. And in some of the old dermatological textbooks, you will even find it synonymously being used. Skin aging equals photoaging. Today we know this is completely wrong, and there are many, many other factors, and exposure to sunlight is just one factor. And other factors are air pollution, or as we just recently discovered, climate factors, exposure to chemicals. So there are many, many reasons how the environment is accelerating the aging process of our skin.
Fascinating. I'm really interested to hear that it's not just the sun. There's a lot of other factors. It's also the air pollution and chemicals and climate. I'm really intrigued by the climate factor. Can you speak a little bit more about the impacts of climate on the skin?
Yeah, sure. I mean, unfortunately, we are living in times of global warming, and we all have learned that it's not only unpleasant because sometimes it's just very warm and we suffer a little bit because we don't know where to go. It's also very clear now from a permanently growing number of epidemiological studies that the increase in ambient temperature is having health effects, detrimental health effects. So mortality goes up significantly. In particular, the risk of developing cardiovascular diseases and lung diseases is being increased. But it also affects our brain, so also mental diseases are increasing. And therefore, it's not really a surprise that the skin, which is primarily affected as one of the outer barriers of our body, is also being affected by global warming. And we actually just finished a study and published it where we looked in 1,500 Indian women, and we did this study in India because there, as for example, compared to Germany, the effects of climate change are much more pronounced. So we were first interested if there is something that one can discover. And we found that there is a strong association between the risk of developing facial aging signs such as wrinkles and hyperpigmented spots and an increase in ambient temperature in combination with relative humidity. This is also very interesting. So only when both factors come together, then we have an acceleration of skin aging in the face. For example, for a period of 5 years, if there is an increase in 1.5 degrees Celsius, this already has significant effects. So it's not dramatic. It's a chronic effect, but this makes the difference because it's over years.
I just want to give you a little bit of statistics from the study, kind of give you a sense how much the climate factor can impact your skin aging. For instance, just a 1 degree C increase in the heat index, it is associated with like a 1.314 increase in the odds of having the hyperpigmentation on the forehead, and 1.17 fold increase in the odds of having the crow's feet wrinkles, the wrinkle on the eye corners, and a 1.3 fold increase in the odds of having the under eyes wrinkles. So you can see how much impact actually those heat index can have on your skin.
This is blowing my mind right now. I was always under the assumption that, in the winter, my skin's a lot drier. I'm a lot less comfortable. I always thought that cold was worse for us. But now we're learning that actually an increase in heat isn't what's best for our skin.
Yes.
Well, I guess it's both.
It's both, yeah.
So it's also, you should also not have dry skin. This is what Dr. Kong mentioned before then, because this will compromise your barrier function. And then if you have bad barrier function, you're more susceptible to UV, more susceptible to pollution. And so it's also not a good idea. The best is just normal temperature and make sure your skin barrier stays in good shape. The other question that really intrigued us was always why? Why does an increase in heat index give us a 10 if you want? Huh? So why do we start to make more melanin, which is the basic mechanism, for example, behind the pigmentary lesions that we are developing? And we believe actually it's a protective mechanism because the heat is causing a lot of oxidative stress in human skin. And the melanin that we are making is a very, very potent antioxidant. So we think that the skin is kind of preparing then for longer periods of heat by synthesizing more melanin, and then theoretically the skin would be better protected.
Incredible. You mentioned India, and so I'm curious, how do other factors like location or maybe genetics or any other that come to mind, how do those things impact the exposome?
Yeah, location is very important because location actually plays into genetics. The Indian population is not homogeneous. Depending on where you are, your genetic background is also very different. And with the help of Amway, we can actually look into this because they helped us to collect DNA and to be able to sequence the DNA. And now we can actually we can look at the genetic origin of the individuals, and we can see if there are certain traits which might be more susceptible as compared to others when it comes to susceptibility towards heat, but also towards UV or towards air pollution. And we're really happy and very excited about this study because this has never been done worldwide. This is the first study that really looks at the genetic basis of skin aging in the Indian population.
Yeah, so this is actually the ongoing project based on the finding from the initial Indian women skin studies. So as Dr. Krutmann said, so with this kind of study, we are trying to understand the interactions between the genetics and the environmental factors, which lead to different type of the skin aging phenotypes. Yeah, so as Dr. Krutmann said, we try to understand how those genetic factors can confer the susceptibility to certain skin aging phenotype. For instance, maybe one group of women with certain type of the genetic makeup are more susceptible to like UV radiation, but another group has a different type of the polymorphism we call might be more susceptible to the air pollution. So this kind of a study can give us a much better understanding of this interplay. Yeah.
And another strength of this study is that we collected the data in 3 different cities in India. So we looked at 500 women in New Delhi, 500 in Mumbai, and 500 in Bangalore. And the reason why we chose these 3 cities is because they are very, very different also when it comes to exposure to air pollution. So Delhi is the worst. We all know it's the capital for air pollution. So people like me love it very much because it's an extreme situation. You can really study health effects. Mumbai is somewhere in between, and Bangalore is relatively clean air, at least for Indian standards. And then you have a very nice gradient. And then, for example, you can ask questions like, does air pollution have an effect on the heat-induced skin aging or vice versa? And there is indeed evidence from studies in other cohorts for lung diseases that when you're being exposed to air pollution and the temperature goes up, then the air pollution-induced damage to the lung is even worse.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you're saying that the circles that I sometimes have under my eyes is not only genetics, but it also could be climate and these other factors in my exposome.
Absolutely.
That's the hypothesis.
Absolutely, yeah. And as also part of the ongoing project, so we are also planning for the next step. So Dr. Krutmann and his team at IUF recently developed a model. So we are planning to use this model to kind of define the relative contribution of each individual, the exposomal or genetic factors into the skin aging phenotype. So with that kind of model, we might be able to say, answer that kind of question. For example, like for Caucasian women, what are the most important exposomal factors that can lead to the more hyperpigmentation on the face? So answer may be the UV number one, maybe the air pollution number two. But what about the wrinkles? The UV may be still number one, but number two may be the smoke exposure instead of the air pollution. Air pollution may not have a very big impact on the wrinkle formation, right? So with that kind of research, we can understand the interactions between the exposomal factors and genetic factors and how they work together to contribute to all those skin aging problems.
All right, this is all really good information. I'm curious, so I mentioned I'm getting some darker circles under my eyes, and a lot of fun things are happening because I'm getting older, right? This is unavoidable. But what happens to exposomes? Can you talk about what happens to the exposomes with different life stages?
Let me give you a very drastic example, and that is not related to skin, but to brain development. But I think it really illustrates how important this concept of life stage dependency is. If you're pregnant and you will be living in Los Angeles in one of these parts where the airplanes have thrown down all the flame retardants to stop the fires, then it's really a problem for your baby, because the developing brain is highly susceptible to flame retardants. And this dramatically can increase the risk that later on the intellectual capabilities of the person that will be born are greatly reduced. For adults, it's not a big deal because the brain is completely developed, and this problem would not occur at all. Yeah, so I think this is very drastic, but it's a good example to illustrate that where in life you are. And if you remember the definition that I gave about the exposome, it's really from conception to death. So the very early stages and also the very late stages, as a rule, are the stages where we are most susceptible. And then in between, we're more or less okay because we have more or less very well adapted to the environment. But still, we differ at what we call SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, which make one person a little bit more susceptible and the other one a little bit more resistant. But children, babies, and the elderly, they are the true risk groups. And just to give you an example for skin, if you look at my skull, you will see there are not that many hairs left. And this is really a problem because, first of all, my capacity to repair damage is decreased because I'm older. Plus, this is a predilection site for susceptibility. In the scalp area, the capacity, for example, to repair UV-induced damage is much less as compared to other parts of the skin. So therefore, every morning I put a lot of sunscreen on my skull, and when I'm outside, I usually now wear something to cover it, a cap or a hat.
John, as you were sharing about how exposomes affect even brain health as well as skin health, it just reminded me a key lesson I'm taking away from this entire series, which is that everything is connected. So I'm just thinking about what we talked about in episode 3, nutrition, or gut health in episode 2. I'm really curious, how does the microbiome affect skin health?
I think the microbiome is one of the key links between organs, actually. So one of my favorite examples is always, we know a lot about the gut microbiome. That's probably the best studied microbiome. Also, it's the easiest because the purification of the bacteria is the easiest as compared to skin. And we're all familiar with things that we can do which will be beneficial for the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome starts to make factors which are soluble and which can then travel to other organs. And skin is a very good example for this. So we have a very nice study where we looked at skin barrier defects, and we could overcome these skin barrier defects by feeding a part of broccoli, which is very rich in a ligand for a certain transcription factor. And that was stimulating then the gut microbiome, and then the gut microbiome actually improved the skin barrier function. So another example, because you were mentioning this morning that every morning you're using now your emollients and your lotions to improve your skin barrier function. It's a very good idea also to keep your good cognitive capacities, because there are very nice studies from Korea that individuals who have compromised skin barrier function, because of this, there is a very mild but chronic inflammation going on in their skin. You might have heard this buzzword, inflammaging. And it actually means that there is a constant production of inflammatory mediators, which then gets into the circulation and they can travel to the brain. And then they can reduce your cognitive capabilities. So you will develop what is called mild cognitive impairment. And if this goes on for years and years and decades, you have an increased risk of developing diseases like Alzheimer's disease and others. So everything is connected, as you said, and therefore it's also so important to make sure the health of our skin is in an optimal situation.
Yeah, it's what Dr. Krutmann just described is something called skin-brain axis. It's probably less talk about compared with the gut-skin or gut-brain axis, but as Dr. Krutmann said, it's all connected, right? So when we under stress or anxiety, we're more likely to have the flare-up of the skin conditions, right? Psoriasis or some other eczema diseases. On the other side of the coin, if you're when people are having those inflammatory skin conditions, they're more likely to develop the cognitive impairment over the time. And also, Dr. Krutmann mentioned a lot of skin, the microbiome examples. I want to share another example from our own Amway research. Some of the common skin problems like eczema, acne, oftentimes actually are caused by something called bacteria virulent mechanism. For instance, the bacteria called Staphylococcus aureus. So usually they actually are harmless or even beneficial to the skin, but under certain conditions, they can transform into those bad virulent form of bacteria causing all kind of troubles, inflammation. So this is another example of how those microbiome can impact your skin health.
Just incredible.
Yeah, that's really great. Can you talk to us, Dr. Kong, a little bit more about other studies you've done with the botanicals and the effects that those have?
Yeah, a good example is another project we are planning to initiate with Dr. Krutmann. So we discussed the impact of the climate factors, the heat index on the skin damage, right, on the skin aging. So Dr. Krutmann, they develop a ex vivo skin model that can mechanistically demonstrate the impact of the heat in generating more hyperpigmentation. So this can kind of give us the new technology we can show to help to kind of combat the impact from the climate factor, from the heat and the humidity for the future. Yeah.
That is fantastic news. That's great.
So, Dr. Kong, at the end of all of our episodes, we love to get those practical steps. So what would you like to share with our listeners about what they can do to help improve their health span, especially when it comes to skin and the exposome?
I think some of them are probably not surprising. You already know you need to protect you from the sun damages, but also keep in mind everything is connected. We talked about earlier. So you also need a good lifestyle, like quit smoking, don't drink too much, right? And you need to sleep well, and also manage your stress, anxiety. Everything is connected. At the end of the day, all those will impact your skin health. Yeah.
Spectacular. And John, is there anything else that you'd like to add here at the end of the episode?
Sure. All this will work even better if you live in a clean environment, and so in an unpolluted environment. So also make sure the water you're drinking is clean and the air you're breathing is as clean as you can manage to get it clean. I mean, of course, you cannot be always in complete control, but there are measures that one can take.
Well, thanks to both of you for being our teachers today. Jean, thanks for calling in. We appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Thank you. It was fun.
And Dr. Khan, thank you for joining us today and getting to share all of your knowledge with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Krutmann. It's always a pleasure to working with you.
And thanks to all of you tuning in from home for giving us a listen.
What are things that you take away from today?
You know what I think would be a really great idea? making sure that the air I'm breathing and the water I'm drinking is all clean. Healthy environment, healthy skin.
I love it. And the rest will follow, right?
That's right. So make sure you like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.